All right. Hi. I literally had no idea that it would pre-prompt. I'm still learning how StreamYard works. I just wanted to record a video, not on TikTok. And so I didn't realize it was going to notify people and let people in the comments. So I just want to start off by like apologizing with that if you've been sitting around waiting for me to say something, because I just wanted to make sure. And I don't even know if I've got all my ducks in a row. However, what I do have is some stuff. So I was creating my timeline, and of course it's bringing up all of these thoughts. And what I want to start off by saying is like, this is not legal analysis. This is not like, I'm not a lawyer. This is me reading through these public court filings and investment documents and reacting to them like it's speculation. All of this is speculation. Everything here is alleged and disputed, and like I'm just walking through all of this. It's nothing's been decided by a court of law. Okay, so let's get into this messiness, because holy shit. Let's go through and start you off with just where I was at. Is there a way for me to share? Look at me still just like still trying to figure out how to best do this. So let's look at my screen. I'm going to pull it open here while I have you all live. So what I've got going on right now is, and where I started was, I was looking at the trademarks to go, oh yeah, when did they file when was the trademark filed for Betty Buzz? Just to kind of get an idea of when the businesses started. She announced it September 21st. And we're going to add this here so we can just kind of look through and you guys can see, oh, look, this is when all this stuff happened. So I was going through and I was like, oh, when did these happen? And I come in here, and so there's a few that are dead, right? So you see this where it says it's dead and abandoned. Owners is Betty Buzz LLC. But I was like, well, but when was it originally filed? And why is there so many? And I learned about this a while back when I was investigating Blake and Ryan's LLCs. I have a whole list of them, but now I thought I added to it, but I think it brought up more questions than answers. Also, yeah, I'm opening a Diet Coke. It brought up more questions than answers. And I'm also texting with Sarah Yarn in Order, who helps just my brain. She tickles that spot of my brain that like literally is the things that I think friends should always have. It's like, she's so funny. And then also she's so like smart and such a good critical thinker that it's so interesting to have discussions with her. And so I want to go through and show you where I was at. So you see the Betty's Buzz, we don't need that. This is something a little different. However, when you come in here to Betty Buzz, the dead ones, this is where I was clicking. So you come in here, and when you come down, you go, oh, this was filed back in April 28th of 2021. Okay. And you go, interesting. Let's get into here and see who filed the application for the trademark. And you come in and you go, okay, Betty Buzz, 420. And you go, oh, share this tab. So you come in here and you go, Betty Buzz. And you go, oh, Ipen Holdings. And I was like, great. Does Blake and Ryan have another LLC that maybe I just didn't clock, right? And I was like, Ipen Holdings. Then I'm like, where have I seen that word before? And then I go, oh yeah, I remember. Ipen Holdings. That came up as a part of the Betty B Holdings situation. And I go in and you go and you look. Oh, let's see if I can make this a little bigger. How do I make her? I'll make my document all big so everybody can read through and see. But when you come into it and you go, okay, totally normal that, maybe this LLC, whatever is, oh, I have to remove this first. So it's maybe totally normal that, Ipen Holdings files the trademark. Maybe it was a holding company that they had structured. And if you don't know how, big companies structure their corporations, just look into it, because they have to do like a separate holdings, and there's an operating, and there's like sometimes they'll do like IP, like their intellectual property. They want to keep in a different LLC and the way that they structure those things. And so I was looking and I saw, oh, okay, this is exciting. Hi, Sarah. So the Ipen Holdings was put up. And so I was like, where have I seen that name? And it literally came up in the Betty B Holdings agreement that was filed. So this is it's like document, the second amended and reinstated limited liability company agreement for Betty B Holdings LLC. And in it is language. And of course, I don't highlight it all cute and adorable like Sarah Yarn and Order did. So you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, because she's just such a wizard. I'm going to go pull her screenshots that she did. Of course, I didn't do this ahead of time. But it says in 11:15, where's that at? 11, yeah, right there. So in paragraph 11, oh, go back. Oh, go back. We're fumbling this, guys. Hi, everybody. How's it going? I'm just not good at without pausing, because my brain pauses and everybody, I would just want to make sure I say this correctly. But here are all these screenshots. Replace. See, this is why I didn't want to go live first. And then but what ends up happening is, let's pull this off. Remove. We're going to. This one right here. Put it on there. Jeez, you guys, I'm just trying to be as amazing as, like, yeah, just go through this. Okay, so in the representation, so 11.5, so it acknowledges that each member hereby agrees and acknowledges that through the effective date, Cohen Debates Abrams Shepherd LLP is acting counsel to Ipen and the company in connection with the formation of the company and the negotiation and the drafting of this agreement. So you see the words Ipen and you're like, wait, like Ipen Holdings, whatever. And you're like, and then you continue in and you find a little bit more about like, oh, okay, wait, there's more information in here about who the people are. So then when you go in and you see that it says talent managers, the Ipen managers, and this is in the Betty B Holdings LLC agreement. Okay. Ipen managers, Andrew Chrysomalis. So he's the big beverage guy that they hired on. Then they've got 3 other people. There's 2 talent managers and then a Belfer manager. But it says each manager shall serve until a successor is appointed. So these are basically the board members, the Ipen managers, but they are allowed to appoint up to 4 total Ipen managers. Okay. 4 of them. They're allowed to have 4, meaning that they have a large majority of the ability to appoint board seating. So then when I was like looking at the thing, I was like, okay, let's remove this. We'll add this back. So then when I was looking, I was like, okay, so that makes sense then. They were the ones that came through and they filed her initial filings for like the Betty Buzz products, right? So it's not totally abnormal that they would do this, in my opinion, and maybe somebody can correct me, but I mean, I've made a couple of LLCs in my lifetime, and I think companies do this all the time. But what's just interesting to me is that when this address here, when they went through and had the owner of the mark, they created this trademark, right? So that's going to be kind of the brand name, that brand that you see in the store. And especially when it comes down to a beverage company, the brand is everything, because that's the logo, the everything. You don't care. You can find a different bottle manufacturer. You can find probably different people to put the stuff in it, and you want the product to be great, right? However, you don't necessarily need to have like, let me see. We want to go back to the others. Yeah, we want to go and share this tab instead. So you want to make sure that everything's consistent across the board, but you can kind of change up some of those inner workings. So then I was like, well, when did they maybe do a change? Because now who currently owns it is Betty Buzz LLC. So I'm like, when did Betty Buzz LLC come into play? And if you look, and of course I did my best with the let's remove this bag and then we're going to put this up, the master. So this is a part of my master timeline. Okay, you guys. And so I'll put it all big in here. But if you come on in and you see Blake Lively went ahead and announced Betty Buzz. So this is the non-alcoholic carbonated beverage on September 23rd, 2021. However, if you go back, she incorporated Betty Buzz LLC back in March before they even filed the trademark on the LLC. So was it just a mistake that they, oopsie-daisies, went ahead and filed it under IPN Holdings? Or was it intentional from the very beginning that IPN was going to be the one that held the LLC? And where more questions came up was, I was like, does Blake Lively even own or control Betty Buzz LLC? We know that she's the face of the brand, right? But does she control it? So a hint to that would be coming back and you go, okay, so we're in there. We're like, okay, well, what? Let's see when they made a change of address. So this was after the announcement, 2 weeks after the announcement, there was a change of address and a change of representation. And I think that this first part here at the top, I'm gonna chalk it up as to, like, let's just put a pin in this part, okay? But what I want you to pay attention to right now is that we know prior to this that there was only one other filing, was the application and the approval of the application. This is the third filing in all of everything for this trademark. Betty Buzz LLC, 381 Park Avenue South, Suite 1015. Betty Buzz LLC. That is the same exact address as IPN Holdings LLC. So when they said there was a change of address or a change of representation, this LLC was formed back in March, but it didn't take ownership of the brand, that item, until later on. Okay. Does anybody kind of pick up what I'm putting down a little bit here? Do you see? Yeah, I'm going to go over the moralities clauses, and let me tell you because me and Sarah were talking about this too, and it's a little interesting. Okay, so that's a little bit like, let's fall back on the conspiracy kind of. So we know, so from that trademark and from even the Betty B Holdings document, we know that IPN Holdings and IPN investors have been involved in the Betty Buzz business since the very beginning. Early involvement. They're a part of this origin story, and it's giving like incubator energy, like, here, we saw what Ryan did with Aviation Gin. I wonder if Blake can do the same, right? So then this is when the tea really starts to begin, is when we get into the holding agreement, okay? Or the Betty Buzz holding agreement. Let's pop in here. This is the better one we want to see. So as we're looking at Betty B Holdings agreement, we can kind of see where those what the board seats and where the board composition's set up, right? And it's basically the rule book. It's like, I'm not going to read through every single word, but what is jumping out to me is who has the control over the board seats, or who has the control over this brand and this company. I'm drinking my Diet Dr. Pepper. Where's my page at? This is easier when I did Sarah's screenshots. Who is in charge? Who has majority share and majority control on this board is IPN. They get to appoint 4 out of the 7 seats. And Blake and Ryan, talent managers, automatically get 2 seats. That's it. Out of a board of 7 people, 2 out of 7 is not a lot of control in a company. I wonder why that is. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, and well, let's get into the morality clauses, because that's also a really fucking weird part, right? So what Sarah pointed out, and I thought was odd too, is it odd that there's these morality clauses that are coming up in here, but they're specifically referring to Reynolds. And when I first read through it, even second time through it, I read it and I thought, okay, This is more like they're saying Reynolds because I'm assuming it's Blake Reynolds, right? Ryan Reynolds. But Sarah pointed out to me that the language of, and I took a screenshot of our conversation. Let me throw her up here. So I was like, I think it's the legal name Reynolds. And she was going through and she's like, no, it says by Reynolds, not either of the Reynolds. Like, and she's like it says Lively. She was specifically pointed out that in that document, it points out Lively means Blake Lively and Reynolds means Ryan Reynolds. So they made a completely separate morals clause for Ryan Reynolds. But why is Blake treated differently? You know, and what jumps out to like, they're clearly separated and I'm not sure why, but lawyers, I don't think that they just do that accidentally. So I'm clocking it a little bit. It kind of stood out to me. Okay. And I'm wondering, like, I think it's due to risk. And that's my guess, is because when you're creating a brand and creating a product and you're trying to value something and you're looking at your investment, I think it's interesting that, you know, Blake's image and Blake's PR is already calculated into that brand because they decide to make her the face of it, right? But Ryan also had morality clause built in, and it's very interesting the way that they built it. They specifically say, let me get, of course, that we've got all of this. Reynolds with an act of the Reynolds moral clause violation between Lively and or Reynolds. So I think that they are basically trying risk of divorce. No, it could be risk of divorce, but I think risk of like assets risk, like risk allocation. Like I think that they're trying to say, we've already calculated in if Blake just blows everything up, the brand's probably not going to do so hot, but her value is already incorporated into the brand. But I think they put this separate morals clause in case Ryan Reynolds goes out and blows something up. Does that, or like, not literally, but just, you know what I'm saying? Very figuratively, like, I think it's not that Ryan was disposable, but rather they knew that there's risk that comes along with Ryan Reynolds being associated with Blake Lively that we've all kind of identified, right? Like, if Ryan ends up doing something super wild morally, it also produces external risk to the brand. And so Sarah was saying, like, it makes me wonder if they got the phone and they saw that Reynolds was a part of this this whole, you know, Ryan Reynolds is being dragged into this whole issue with It Ends With Us and the Justin Baldoni situation. And the brand and IPN investors got upset, you know, because Ryan was also involved, which carries a lot of risk. And so, you know, Betty B has the morality clause. Sarah says this. She says, Betty B has the morality clause. Let me pull it up so we can accurately put her in here. So Sarah said, like, you know, Betty B has the morality clause that if Reynolds does something notorious, they can remove him and her from them as manager. And this is particularly important because if they were thinking about shutting down Betty Buzz, and their main reason for not doing so was because the PR around Blake and the brand being, and yeah, it's all messy, right? What are you guys thinking? Where are we at? I feel like I need to switch my spot because I'm in a funky position. I was planning on recording something artfully and not going live, but look at me now, you guys. Look at all of this, you know? Let me see. Where's for my notes? So IPN Holdings LLC was the one that filed the trademark. They were the applicant. They went ahead and transferred it. But it looks like IPN, or the people who own IPN, may also be I don't know, I'm speculating. Maybe they're also the owners of Betty Buzz LLC. Maybe that's not Ryan and Blake. Maybe they just have the holdings, the Betty B holdings, and they're in charge of that. So, and if IPEN is the company that is able to appoint 4 out of the 7 board members or board managers, then they're the ones that control the corporate governance of the brand. So, I mean, the brand is Betty Buzz, it's the trademarks, and maybe Betty B Holdings is there just to manage, own, and control. I don't know, maybe the LLCs, I don't know. And so I'm thinking that IPEN might be the founder of the brand Betty Buzz. Maybe it isn't Blake Lively. And I'm wondering if that also makes them the control investor into the company. And I wonder what that means for the damages claims that Blake Lively is asking for. I don't think that the talent, where are you guys? What are we saying? Yeah, they're both at light. I think they're exposed. I think they're pretty exposed. So I've been kind of just so when they transferred everything into the Betty Buzz LLC, I've been kind of disappears publicly, but continues to dominate the behind the scenes control. So it's intentionally upstreamed. They put this public facing narrative out there with like Blake Lively as the face. And Ryan Reynolds has some association with it, right? Because they got the aviation gin, and Betty Buzz is right there too. So we can have gin and Betty Buzz, right? So Ryan Reynolds is there by association with this marketing halo, and they can kind of dibble dabble off of both. And they create Betty Buzz, this celebrity brand, right? However, as we continue to see, the public facing narrative is not what's going on behind the scenes. And I think these documents, these specifically the Betty B, holdings documents, that incorporation LLC document, those are the things that are telling us what's happening behind the scenes. And it's maybe that IPEN controls 4 out of the 7 seats. Do they control the board? I think so. Betty B Holdings owns Betty Buzz and the BBZ IP. Maybe the talent is like Blake and Ryan are kind of structurally boxed into this deal. I think it just speaks to who really has the power, if you know what I mean. Now, the morals clause symmetry, we kind of went through, it's Ryan was the marketing amplifier. Let me see, where are my notes? I also talked through, I guess we already I don't want to beat a dead horse. We kind of went through it all. But I guess the bottom line when it comes down to the morality clauses is that, Blake was being protected, like the control investment held the governance. So IPEN kind of had control. Blake was protected, but she's not constrained. And then Ryan, I think he's kind of the one that's bigger at risk here. And so, when I started to go through now, I think where it's time for the K1s. Let's look at the K1s. So then I started to go through the returns, right? Their investments and stuff. That kind of speaks a little bit more to, okay. And of course I don't think I have pictures of them. Well, didn't plan that far in advance. Let's just talk about the K1s. Okay. I'll just make it me. So then when you go into their investment documents, and I can pull it up. Let me see. I could just pull it up from their thing. From the docket. See, this is where I wanted to have all of this stuff like whatever, but I got nervous because everybody was waiting around for me. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to share this tab. Let me put it to the screen. Here we go. So when you get into the K1s, this is where you start to notice a little bit more. So this is year what? This is the second one. This is the 2023 one. Okay, so when you look at the K1, so like you look at the K1s, LOL Hada LLC, I hate it so much. I hate that somebody thought it'd be funny to make a company named LOL Hada. Um, this is the K1 that they got from Betty B Holdings, and what it is it basically just shows LOL Hada LLC as a lender, okay? And you go through and you can kind of see the finances from this K1. And you can see that the lender from that agreement earlier that we kind of went through, the lender is going to appoint two of the board managers. And the two board managers that LOL Hada LLC appointed to the board of Betty Buzz and Betty B Holdings, sorry, is Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. So they are the ones that are going to control the endorsement agreement. So they have approval rights over the key actions. And so the LOL Hada LLC is not just some random investor. It's kind of like what's a good way to explain it? Like the economic vehicle that basically it's like how they participate in their own company financially without owning the company directly, because IPN Holders owns that IP directly. Does that make sense? So this is how they participate. And so noting in this first exhibit here, you can see that they contributed their own money. $375,000 of their own money is what they invested into this launch of this company, Betty Buzz. And they ended up with 644, sharing some profits and loss. So there's ordinary business loss. Yeah, we can whatever. But the translation from this is seeing that LOL Hada, aka Blake and Ryan, from their own pockets, put in real money and took real losses early, meaning that they bore some risk in participating, and it wasn't like they were just fucking doing it for kicks and giggles. Okay. But let's go to the other one, because the other in 2024, that's when it gets interesting. In 2024, as you can see here, is this the right one? Yeah, you got it up. Okay, perfect. In 2024, when you look at this, the ordinary business loss that they're saying now is 3.4, almost 3.5 million. And the ending capital is a negative 2.8 million, which means that the partner share of like that liability, it's like $3 million that they've lost. And that capital account is like in the pooper, meaning they now kind of carry this massive downside of risk, including exposure to debt. But I'm sure they have all these other ventures. There's money somewhere, right? But they're looking at this going, oh shit, this wound is hemorrhaging, right? We need to figure out how to cauterize it, or we gotta figure out how to stop the bleeding, because this is a real big issue. And that's when I think the slide deck kind of comes into play, right? And where it kind of explains this risk right here too, this K1 kind of also explains to me the risk and that Reynolds morals clause as well, because Ryan can be removed as a board manager, but Blake can't, because she can't under the same trigger. That's why they're named separately intentionally. In my opinion, this is all speculation. I'm just a lady. I'm just a lady thinking through this out loud, and I just wanted to record it on a video. So the K1s kind of explain why LOL Hate is like a partnership, right? I fucking hate that I have to say that. LOL Hate it out loud. Yeah, Ryan can be removed. So it just explains that they're that partnership, right? And that Blake is already priced into the brand, like I kind of talked about earlier, but Ryan's risk it's external and it's portable, like we can get rid of it. So if Ryan becomes a liability, we can sever those ties, not necessarily the economics that come from this LLC. Does that make sense? So either way, that LL Hada LLC is going to bear the losses. And so when you're putting it all together, it's interesting that IPN Holdings controls. So just to kind of review what we've been going through. I know we're kind of talking about a lot of stuff, and especially if you're not saying we can all learn. I love learning, right? Learning about how stuff happens, right? When I'm looking at this, I'm putting it all together and I'm going, okay, so I guess IPN Holdings LLC controls the board majority. They started and basically were there at the origin of like the IP, right? They were there from the beginning with that trademark for Betty Buzz. They stay upstream, they're insulated pretty well, and they don't need the morals clause. But this LL Hada LLC is taking some losses and it's carrying some debt exposure, and that is specifically just Ryan and Blake. So let me see, what else do we want to go over? I just don't want to make, we've kind of gone over the K1s. We went over that. There's some other stuff. So there's other key pieces that have come up in like so there's depositions. So there was a deposition that was taken. There was a deposition that was taken with the Betty B, and there was a deposition that was taken with the Chris, I can't, no, don't know why I can never say it, Chrysomelis. However, I think where it all kind of ties back together is the Rule 26 damages. So do I have that up? I don't know if I do. Let's just go to me. So the Rule 26 damages, so we're talking about Blake's trying to claim damages against her company because of her reputation. So she's saying the Wayfair parties damaged my reputation, and because of that, I suffered $3 million and all this stuff in losses from my business. Here's my K1 that shows you all of that. So so this is the big one. So like in her, the last one was actually the fourth. She did do a fourth. I think I had been referencing the third. I don't think there's much of a difference, but in the fourth, where do I have it at? Okay, so yeah, here's the fourth one. It's 173. So if you didn't know, so like the just to explain the disclosure, so these are Blake Lively's required to amend and continue to file documents of all the people who were involved, all of the people who may have documents or information regarding to this case where they did discovery and things yet. So it's not evidence yet, but it's like a roadmap, right? And so it's like how they went and pulled their discovery of like who, like witnesses, entities, and theories of like people that she intends to use, like here's who I'm calling and here's what I say they know things about. And so she explicitly ties in her Rule 26. So she ties in Betty Buzz and Betty Booze as like, so she lists Betty Buzz LLC and she lists Betty Booze Opco LLC as entities with discoverable information in regards to like the retaliation and her damages. But that's her like formal notice of that brand harm is like a part of her damages case. And she also includes this Andrew Chrysomelis in there as well as everything. Oh, hold on. Where do we go? How do I pause me? Sorry. I got people coming in and out. I didn't plan on doing this live. Sorry guys. I was just trying to gather things and I was like, you know what? I'm going to record this. And I was like, I think StreamYard I can just do a recording on, right? And it's so interesting. But I need to figure out more about this whole whatever. So I went through, I have my bullets. So, where was I at? We talked about the K1s. We talked about the Betty B Holdings as the rule book with the moral clause. We talked about LOL Hada LLC and like the money flow, right? But the damages claims. So the Rule 26. So in her filings, Blake is claiming about like around $22 million in lost profits tied specifically to Betty B Holdings. But that's her claim. It's not proven, it's not accepted. It's just what she wants the court to consider. But the internal decks is where the tea is at. And this is where I'm like, I was asking Sarah, I was like, I cannot find the slide decks to save my life. I looked for them everywhere and I was like, why is my brain? It's because when they re-uploaded them, they literally they re-uploaded them and they renamed them so that they were named something different, which is just so annoying. But what they did, so the internal decks, the slide decks for Betty Buzz and Betty Booze, they went ahead. Where were they at? She said it was 12:30. Yeah. Oh, we're other way. Let me put you guys up here. Add it to the stage. Well, add it to the stage. So the slide decks with Betty Buzz. So this is from October 1st. So straight up in these slide decks, they are literally talking about how Betty Buzz is struggling. They straight up say like they're unclear about the product market like fit. There's thin margins. They're being stuck behind other competitors, like all of these other brands out there, right? And so they talk about like strategy. They're like, hey, we need to talk about what we're doing here. Are we gonna keep at this? Like what this is our current strategy, but we were projecting a little bit more. We were hoping that this was gonna do a little bit better, right? And in this first deck, so they go through let's go back to the other one. So that first deck, they are pretty much like saying like, hey, the product market fit is unclear. Like we're kind of struggling against, Fever Tree and all these other brands. Like, but oh, we just want to download the PDF. Here you go. But so that's kind of the first separate. Then here's the second one. So then they come through and they're talking about comparison of Betty Booze, and the Betty Booze piece is like, okay. So when you go through and you are like looking at the different, like, so this is the summer of 2023 versus the summer of 2024. It's looking like the search interest is much lower for Betty Booze than there is for these other brands. And it's talking about how the drop in search for this is like there was a sales drop with it and a search interest drop in it. And so they're trying to associate, okay, Blake says her reputation was destroyed. That's why nobody was buying her product. When in reality, when people make actions and do things that other people don't like, people naturally just go, okay, well, I'm not going to support that brand anymore because I didn't like something she said. And so immediately the search interest dropped and the sales dropped. And they don't say that the brand was like destroyed. They come through and they say what could have an impact on sales, what could be, happening, but there was limited trade with engagement with BL during key summer launch period. And they go through and they talk about some stuff and like, the variety pack is underperformed. And they don't say that the brand is completely destroyed, but they go through and they say like the marketing slowed down, some of the sales slowed down here, loss of market share at Total Wine. Like, so it's not like the language in this whole deck is not like sabotage. It's kind of like marketing slowed, so everything else slowed down. And it's like we kind of pulled back language. It's not like we're being fucking sabotaged by all these like outside people. Like that's not the language there, right? And so that's kind of the more explains a little bit, but the one that makes you go, "Oh shit," is the last one, right? And that's literally where the rationale comes in, where it's like the what is it, the 122? Let's see what some of you guys are saying while this thing takes its sweet ass time to load. Oh, it's going to do this to me, isn't it? Oh, here we go. Download. Download the PDF. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Yeah, we don't need to see all the promos. We need to go to the end here. And this is what we need to see. Is the... No, is it in this one? We're going to stop that. We're going to do this instead. Because Sarah sent it to me. Rationale for keeping Buzz. They were talking about getting rid of this. Isn't that insane? Already. They were already thinking about cutting ties. Because they are actively thinking about and modeling how to shut Betty Buzz down. And I'm sure that made Ryan and Blake panic, especially after seeing that K1 where they invested all of that money in themselves. They took on all that risk and they took a $3 million hit in all of that. That's, that's a lot. And to hear that, their investors are planning on shutting down their big old brand. What do you mean? Why would they do that? Companies don't just do that lightly. You know what I'm saying? They think about it. And so, it tells me that the brand wasn't just having a bad month. It wasn't just having a bad summer. It tells me that they were actively modeling a shutdown. It was on the chopping block. A company doesn't do that if everything was going great. And I'm sure they're looking for somebody to pin it on. So there was like the high growth deck and all that stuff. That was the one that I kind of went through. But in the end, as you go through, you're like, you start to realize, okay, they didn't, Betty Buzz was already struggling. The cat, like, who bubbling beverages, it's like, I'll take a Walmart like sparkling drink. You know what I mean? It's like the Betty Buzz was already struggling. The category is like a small niche thing, right? And it was supposed to pair a long time. And then she got the Betty Booze, and the Betty Booze is the moneymaker. But in the end, it's like internal decks don't really care about lawsuits. They just want to they want to hemorrhage the bleeding. They want to cut off anything that's making them lose money, and they'll shut a brand down if they need to. But Blake and Ryan have invested themselves in it, and so I'm sure they're trying to prove to their investors, like, hey, we're going to win this lawsuit. We're going to get our money back, you guys. Don't worry about it. We've got this. You know what I'm saying? I don't know that they're targeting Steve's money necessarily. I'm looking at some things, but I think that they weren't really expecting to have somebody come back and fight them as much. So I'm trying to think what else. Where's this? So there was quotes from like the expert. What did Sarah was saying? Like, oh yeah, here's all the stuff. The quote from the expert. It said, oh, this is from the Betty Buzz. Here's a quote. It says, by late 2024, management had doubts about the profitability and the sustainability of Betty Buzz for reasons unrelated to the online manipulation. And that was a quote from the expert report in the Kinrich report saying that they were considering closing Betty Buzz. So not only were the people involved saying that they were going to shut it down, it's like, so all in all, it doesn't mean that there was no damage that happened to any of them. And I don't want people to get off the rails, but it doesn't mean that her business was a guaranteed rocket ship that got derailed. So, when I put all this together and I was literally just trying to I immediately texted Sarah and I was like, it's going to take me 800 years to get through this timeline, because as I'm going through it, I'm realizing and I'm having these thoughts and things. And so when I put it all together, like the IP origin with like the Ipen Holdings having that LLC in the beginning, like the governance structure, the money flow, the damages claim, and the company's own internal analysis, the story just got like super complicated. And I was like, it doesn't mean that something like it doesn't mean that nothing bad happened, but it just means that the damages story isn't very clean. You know what I'm saying? The business was already risky. It already had challenges, and that was all before any of this all blew up. So that's kind of the whole point. Anyways, so that's the tea. You guys can go and read all those documents yourself, but I just thought that was a little interesting piece here at the beginning. The IPEN and I was like, where have I ever heard of IPEN Holdings? I was like, I've seen that. Where have I seen that? And that's what led me here to make this, I guess, 45-minute video. Again, I will say risk wise, this is all like alleged. This is all just speculate. I don't know. What do I know? I'm not involved in any of it. Yes, the companies were so Betty Buzz was in the tank before the smear. Betty Booze, I think, was actually doing okay, like most alcohol brands kind of do. But the alcohol business is such a different structure than the Buzz. The Buzz was just like a, but it's interesting that tells, hi, how's it going? But it's interesting, it just doesn't show you the full picture unless you kind of, does that make sense? So, anyways, I've just been, Ryan Reynolds texting someone immediately went from his, yeah, people keep saying my videos are glitching. That's why I thought I'd do this YouTube live, but I went to StreamYard because I know StreamYard can help you put the documents up a little bit, but I still don't know how. I've not taken the time to learn how to utilize StreamYard to its fullest. And what I'm figuring out is that I don't know how to use it at all because it notified everybody that I was live. And I was like, I'm not trying to do a live. I was wanting to just record a video so I could say it artfully and thoughtfully and then just give it out there rather than the word vomit that I just threw at you guys with all the pauses and whatever in there. Because sometimes my brain thinks and then does that make sense? So then there's a lot of silence to cut out. So. No, there's there's not new documents. Clark went yesterday. I think they thought it'd be difficult, but um TikTok has been it's making me sad. It's making me so sad. It used to bring this joy, and now I don't have any joy. Not that I have joy here on YouTube, but it just is kind of like this little bummer of like it was so awesome. Why are you guys messing with it? You know what I mean? Hi from the chat, guys. How's it going? Thank you so much for everybody being here, and thanks for everybody's generosity and being so awesome and just supporting and coming following me over here from different platforms and such. If you guys don't already, go follow me on Instagram, same handle all across the board. Turns out I was figuring out there's a lot of people that took my video and kind of passed it along, but TikTok is so broken. But anyways, okay, I'm gonna wrap her up. I'll talk to you guys later.